Okay, so the first element of writing that really jumps out at me in most poetry, and certainly within Poe's writing and his own poetry and stories, is alliteration and how he uses it. And I think I'm gonna offer the first paragraph and take it off the table for any further inspection by anybody in my class. I'm taking it off. Nobody should refer in any of your discussion this week to the first paragraph. But right away, very, very dreadfully nervous, two V's. And not only is it, of course, obviously an alliteration, the consonant that repeats itself, but it also serves as a repetition. And very often you'll find that these things will work together. If a writer, particularly a poet, if they want to draw your attention to something particularly, they can use one device, but very commonly they'll double up on them. All of a sudden, you'll see alliteration with repetition and parallelism all clustered together. Well, that's a deliberate message by the writer that they're trying to draw you into this by using these elements of writing. They don't just happen by accident. And I think students don't always notice that. I think that's when you gain an appreciation of the skill of someone like a Poe, that when you see how deliberately these things are applied, there's a million ways that he could have said it, but he didn't say it a million ways. He deliberately chose layering multiple devices in certain places simply to draw your attention to it. And I think, as you know, within this story, certainly, but beyond that, when you're reading other stories and when you're reading poetry particularly, pay attention to when you get those little clusters of writing devices, because that's why they're there. The writer's drawing you into this for a reason. And that's your challenge, is to figure out, why is this all clustered here? Why is this so significant? So in the first sentence, the disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, nor dulled them. So in one sentence there, that D, that strong consonant, that strong D. And then we back it off a little bit. The sense of hearing. I heard all things in heaven. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and absorb how healthily, how calmly. I can tell you the whole story. That's a consonant, but it's a very different consonant than something like the letter D that really hits you. No, this seduces you in. It's almost like the hiss of a serpent. It's a soft way of pulling you in. So that's my examples of alliteration, Chris. I'm going to turn it over to you.
You stole a little bit of my thunder there, because that's so that's actually one of the areas that I chose. But there were also certain things too that I saw, and this was all in the beginning of the story, where it was very impactful. So it's trying to draw you in. What I did notice too, at the end of the story comes this repetition as well, and these themes are repeated as well. But
Can you do you have it in front of you that you can state it,
I
Chris?
no, but just the repetition, even like with the beating of the, the clock, the ticking of the clock, or whatever the words where I don't actually have them. I just made reference that the theme resurfaces again of the repetition, of the, consonants repeating themselves, of words repeating themselves. So I'd have to reflect back to the story.
Well, it is the reason I asked the question, Chris. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to deliberately interrupt you there, but you're 100% right, because the last paragraph is really just one long sentence, and he says, "Dissemble no more. I admit the deed." There's the two D's again,
Yes.
And he says, "Tear up the planks. Here, here." It's
Yes.
the bidding of his hideous heart.
Right.
So we go out the way we came in, with the same alliteration.
Yes. It's like a birth and a death in the story in of itself. But so it's like I said, you actually stole my thunder. And he does things too where he'll say, even there is a lot of repeating of consonants, but also, indeed, the illness only made my mind, my feelings, my senses stronger, more powerful. So you hear a lot of the same consonants. I'm having trouble speaking today, obviously. And, you know, where there's these clusters of thoughts in threes.
Mhm.
A lot of threes he does.
And I'm going to leave that and leave off what device that is, but I agree with you. There's lots of groups of threes, and I want one of you smart students to figure out which writing device that is, so that you have an opportunity to write a little bit about that in your discussion, because that is one of the writing devices. So I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to leave the actual device off of this.
Mhm.
All right, so that was the first one that we were going to look at, which is the, I'm sorry, I lost my place here, Chris, help me. What was the writing device? I'm sorry.
Oh, alliteration.
Thank you. I lost my place here in my
Yeah.
notes. All right, so that was the first one, was alliteration, the deliberate repetition of a particular consonant sound. And then we'll go on to our next writing device, which is different than the narrative devices. These are the things that the writers